Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up Full House here. We got Isha, Kobe, Alex, Ben, Jackson. I'm Joe. Thank you for tuning in to Grid Live Wrap Up. A lot to talk about, a busy weekend of racing. Big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, Colin Michelle, Mark Robin, and David, our newest investor through Patreon. Click on the link in the video description to invest in us each and every month. You can also do Buy Me a Coffee, have your name displayed. You could buy a cup of coffee for a particular on-air member of the team or any one of our Grid Network team members. Show your support for what we do here and bring you great motorsports content. Isha, we got to start off with what everyone thought was going to be one of the most unpredictable races. It was still unpredictable, but not exactly what we anticipated over at Nashville.
Yeah, starting off with INDYCAR, we saw a very different race compared to the last 2 years with 17 cautions given in total. Halfway through the race, only one caution was given for an on-track incident. The initial start was waved off, but overall it was a very different race for Nashville. With 10 laps to go, there was a caution for Linus Lundqvist crashing into the wall. Then another caution for a 3-car pileup was given and Herta into the concrete wall. A red flag was given, and then we had the final restart where Kyle Kirkwood on pit strategy took the win. Second win of the year, and for Michael Andretti, it was 2 weekends in a row that he gets to celebrate in victory lane. So starting with Alex, was Kirkwood's win mainly because of pitting early to take the lead, or do you think that team is capable of winning the next few races?
Well, pit strategy definitely had to play a part in that, but Kyle Kirkwood is one of the most capable drivers on the IndyCar grid right now. And quite frankly, Kyle Kirkwood is probably a top 5 driver in the series and is by far the best driver at Andretti Autosport right now. So I think it was just all talent because he had to hold off Scott McLaughlin today, who's one of the greatest race car drivers in the world. So, yeah, the driver today.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I think strategy certainly played a part in it, but when you look at what Kirkwood's done, already having a win this year, we can pull the point standings up. I think he's actually the top Andretti driver in the points now. He's right there level with Colton Herta. You see there P9 to Herta's P10, and Grosjean's right up there as well in P12. And unfortunately, I don't even think DeFrancesco's on the first page here. But, you know, when you look at Andretti for the last couple of years, we've kind of been talking about them maybe slipping out of the Big Three. Maybe McLaren's now that new member of the Big Three. Kirkwood certainly seems to be leading the charge for Andretti right now and still proving that on that team's best day, they can still get the job done and compete for race wins. So I think, you know, completely agree with what Alex said. Kirkwood's one of the best young drivers in the series, and he certainly proved that again today.
Ben, Alex, we know how much skill that this guy has on street circuits. We learned it at Long Beach, and in a caution minimal race here at Nashville, I think clean air is certainly a thing that's going to benefit with that pit strategy, but I really do think it was very, very heavily reliant on the talent of Kirkwood. So Isha, I think for the next couple of races, it's for sure not going to be a surprise if we see Kirkwood running up front.
Definitely. And now let's take a look at Alex Palou, where the cautions helped him go from being short on fuel to finishing ahead of Newgarden again, an 84-point lead. We have 4 races left, and he's won on 3 of those tracks. Palou is in a position where he can have 2 bad races and still keep the points lead. Then we have Portland, a track that he has already won on, and the season finale at Laguna Seca. Today, more drivers were eliminated from the championship hunt, leaving 7 in the chase. Starting with Ben. How big was it for Palou to win, as he appears to have one hand on the championship?
Yeah, well, we have 7 mathematically in the championship fight, but I think in reality it's more like a 2-man race at this point. And even then, like you mentioned, Isha, Alex Palou can still afford to have at least 1, probably 2 bad races and still be in a very good position to take this championship. So as strong as Joseph Newgarden has been each of the last several races here, you know, doing everything he can and putting up a heck of a fight, Alex Palou has been so dominant all season long that he's still got an 84-point lead here and is still in very prime position to take this championship. So it's huge for him to get another podium today and continue to open that lead back up, especially after Newgarden maximized the Iowa doubleheader and won both of those races to close the gap a little bit. But even then, you know, I think, like I mentioned, it's just going to be too much of a gap. Don't start engraving the trophy just yet, but Palou has had one hand on the championship trophy for quite a while now, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. Alex Palou is just it feels like he's unstoppable. And yesterday in the pre-race show, I said Joseph Newgarden really needs to nail qualifying and do all he can to get like a solid top 5, maybe compete for a win. He did that. He got 4th today. But the problem is, Alex Palou still finished ahead of him in 3rd. And that's just not going to win the championship. And Alex Palou should have ran out of fuel if we didn't have those late cautions in this race. And Newgarden had 5 more laps of fuel. And Palou was bound to finish like 16th or so because of the fuel strategy and how things were playing out. Cautions happened when they did. He managed to stay strong on to that good finish and gain 4 points on Joseph Newgarden.
Alex Palou is definitely Superman right now in the NGT IndyCar series, and also Alex, as you mentioned, the field situation. He also has a lucky horseshoe as well, because if it wasn't for those cautions at the end of the race, it very well could have been a different story. And it just goes to show that when you think this number 10 team is going to have a bad day, they just somehow still seem to keep turning things around, ending up with a really good finish. And they also got lucky on the streets of Toronto as well when he had that front wing damage. It very well could have ended up hurting him, but he was able to get a great finish there. Got another one today in Nashville, and next week can go into the Indy Road Course, and we'll see what he can do there.
Yeah, definitely. And now let's turn towards Newgarden, who had a rough qualifying session compared to his teammates. Jackson, do you think Newgarden could start to receive priority from Team Penske in the coming races with setup and strategy?
I think it's a matter of... I think that's a question you got to ask week by week, and it's such a hard thing to answer because it really does depend on the scenario. Where's Newgarden running compared to his teammates? But I think even then, I don't know if Roger is going to be someone who wants to necessarily have that for the sake of conserving the team's image, but I think it could go 100% either way. Either the captain's all 4 team orders to give this kid a shot at the championship, or I think it's about saving face and letting the guys battle. But it's hard for me to give a genuine answer right now.
Yeah, I don't think Team Penske would do that. I think you can look at Gateway last year when both of them were in the championship battle, and there were no team orders, and Newgarden had a much better shot at the championship than McLaughlin last year. So I don't think you'll see anything like that unless one of them's having like a really bad day and there's like pit selectors, like who will they focus on? They'll probably focus on Newgarden when it comes to pit strategy and stuff. But I don't see like, oh, hey, we need you to get out of the way for Joseph Newgarden. I don't think you're going to see that at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. It doesn't seem like a Roger Penske type of thing to do with all the team orders and all of that. I'm sure they're definitely going to be pouring in max resources into Joseph Car to make sure they're giving him the best chance to go out there and win the championship. But if it's like 2 laps to go and let's say Palou has a really bad race, he's out, and then Scott McLaughlin's leading and Joseph Newgarden second, you're not going to hear Roger Penske or Tim Cindric come on the radio and be like, Scotty, we're going to need you to pull back and let Joseph win this race or anything like that. But if anything, they're going to make sure that number 2 Chevrolet is going to have everything it's needed to try to take the fight to Palou. But as we've been saying in recent weeks, we're going to have to see like an epic collapse from that number 10 team for them to lose the championship at this point.
Yep.
Well, let's turn the clock back to 2012. We're at Sonoma. There's 3 races left in the season, and Will Power finishes second to Ryan Briscoe in that race. His Team Penske teammate at the time in a race for Ryan Hunter-Reay's main championship rival, falling out towards the back of the pack. And John Oriovitz, I've got the column pulled up right here on my phone. I'm just going to read out what he concluded with in a word on team orders, if you will. Think those 10 points Power potentially lost at Sonoma means something? And do you think Penske Racing will second-guess itself for not imposing team orders at Sonoma if Power somehow loses the title by less than 10 points? Do you know how many points Will Power lost the 2012 title by to Ryan Hunter-Reay? 3 points. So I'm not saying, it's been 11 years. Things can potentially change, but Roger Penske, Team Penske, they were very adamant at the time. Team orders is not how we race. We're not bringing that Formula One political stuff here into the IndyCar series. It's a very different era right now with Penske actually running the series. I don't know if he would change his mind, if he has any regrets. Power, of course, got his championship a couple of years later, not to mention added a second one last year as well. But again, I would just, as much as I don't like team orders, I certainly understand why they're imposed, but I would hope that, we look at a championship fight and we recognize it's every driver for themselves out there, even if we're teammates and we share resources and we share setups and things like that. I would hope Newgarden's allowed to fight for this championship on his own. And the way he's been running, I don't know if he's even going to need preferential treatment because he's probably going to be the lead driver of Team Penske for the last 4 races anyway.
Ben, that's a stellar point, and I just want to point out, adding on to that, just how much the captain's already been under fire for, maybe throwing a couple too many red flags at the Indy 500 to give Joseph Newgarden the win this year at the 500. So maybe that would also be a factor in determining whether or not we pull team orders here. I'm curious what you guys have to say on that.
Well, I'm not going to put the tinfoil hat on and say Roger Penske threw the red flag to try to give his driver the win. I think Roger's been very, very clear ever since he bought the Speedway and bought the series that that's a laughable idea that he would try to give his team preferential treatment here. But it does make you wonder. It certainly fires up the Facebook comments, I suppose, with kind of fans that you know who I'm talking about, right? But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I would very much like to see team orders avoided whenever possible, but it does make you wonder, do they have any regrets? You can look back and pinpoint certain individual places in the season, but then again, if Will Power doesn't lose control of his car at Fontana, he coasts that championship easily. So you can always go back and look at little moments here or there and say that cost me the championship, or if we'd done that slightly differently, we'd been in a different position. I think, like we've been saying, Alex Palou has been so dominant this year that you can't really do that for one race at this point with the gap that he has. It's been over the course of the season, and I think as great as Newgarden's been over these last several races, he's probably still going to come up a little bit short.
If I can respond to the Indy 500 comment, I think that's more this IndyCar series is having an identity crisis on what if they want to go more into entertainment or if they want to go more into actual racing, because they used to be fine with just Indying under yellow, but I don't know if that's the case anymore. But yeah, I just don't, like one of you said, Joseph can just lead his way into this championship on his own. It's just Alex Palou is on another level and he cannot be fazed by anything.
Yeah, well, I talked to a friend of the show, actually, Luis Torres, who's been a guest on Life of the Grid, and Life on the Grid, I should say. If anybody follows him on social media, but he always keeps track of the red flags throughout all the different series and everything. And I asked him today straight up, has there been an increase in red flags over the last couple of years? Because it certainly feels like there has been, and he immediately responded, yes. Just in giving me the stats and everything. The Indy 500 alone with the number of red flags we saw, and thinking back to some of the road and street races last year as well. I know you want to talk about Will Power feeling a little bit robbed and having his car not refire. What was that? One of the Detroit races a couple of years ago, I think. So, it certainly is a little bit more entertaining in terms of the stuff that we get to talk about here on this show. But again, from a sporting integrity standpoint, I think it does raise a couple of question marks as well.
Yep, and thanks, Ben, for pulling those stats up when you were answering. Now let's turn towards the man who finished 6th today, Romain Grosjean. I don't know if you guys caught it, but he was sporting a mustache, and he said that he will shave it off after he wins. So today, after he finished 6th, he did have a smile on. And Ben, do you think we could see a positive stream for Grosjean in the next few races?
Oh, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Shaving off the mustache after you finally win your first IndyCar race. I tell you what, man, I would love to see that happen for Grosjean. I think it would be a very popular victory after everything he's been for the last several years. It's kind of reminding me of Vitor Meira, to be quite honest. I think Vitor Meira is one of the best, certainly in the IRL era, drivers that never won a race. He finished second 8 times. I don't think Grosjean's quite up to 8 runner-up finishes yet, but it feels like he's got to be getting up there at 4, 5, or 6 or something. I know he's come so close so many times, including a couple of times earlier this year. But it's been kind of a bit of a downstretch for him over the last several race weekends. But to come home 6th today, maybe that's a step back in the right direction and can lead to some positive momentum. I know he's got his future up in the air a little bit here, so a win would certainly go a long way in trying to establish that for himself as well. And I know, like I said, would absolutely be a very popular win all throughout the paddock, I think, if we could see Grosjean on the top step of the podium before this year's over.
Ben, I feel like just even the performances that he did today went such a long distance for his job security, with so many moments getting up next to, I believe it was Scott McLaughlin, just running in conditions where other drivers were just inches off the line and just ended up in the wall. So many moments that we feel like Grosjean would catch himself in and would be a race-ending move for him, and yet he avoids it. He fights on and he walks away with a very respectable finish. I don't know if the mustache has properties, and I don't know if that's genuinely helping him as a driver. It certainly did with Lundgaard, and who knows, maybe we see half the grid with mustaches by next weekend. But I genuinely think this is a huge morale booster for Grosjean, and I'm not going to predict anything or put anything in stone here, but I would not be surprised to see him walking away without a win by the end of the season. I think it's entirely possible, guys.
Yeah, totally, Jackson. And the IMS road course, he's had some really good runs as well. So this is certainly going to be a great track coming up for him this upcoming week. But based on how the season's going, his mustache might get awfully thick because things have just not been going well. But Nashville today didn't have any major issues. Had a strong finish. Definitely a good boost for morale for him as a driver and this entire team who have been so close to putting it all together. But it's just all been going wrong with contact and mistakes and all this and crashes. And this is a good opportunity this last stretch of the season for Grosjean and number 28 DHL Honda team to really put some really good finishes together in the year. On a positive note, as we've been saying, his future is definitely up in the air. We don't know if he's going to be able to return to Andretti Autosport next year. But today, it certainly helps his case, and we'll certainly be following this story as IndyCar's silly season ramps up.
Yeah, the thing with Romain Grosjean is that I don't know if he really has any momentum ever in his career, and that's not necessarily to his fault. But as you guys mentioned, he needed a run like this. He really, really needed it because his ride is on the line, and I don't know if there's another ride out there for him. So, but the thing with Grosjean, he definitely needed this. I don't think it's just going to help or hurt, but he is going to probably his best track on the IndyCar schedule at the Indianapolis road course. So a win there, that could change the tides for him. I just don't know if he necessarily has any momentum, just because 1 week he could be wrecking, 1 week he could be competing for the win. He's very inconsistent.
Yeah, and as Ben mentioned before, and I also did, the race had a lot of yellows today, especially towards the end of the race. And next year we can expect to see a few changes, including a modified course layout and a championship deciding round. So starting with Kobe, do you believe the lack of cautions caught drivers and strategists by surprise? And do you think a modified layout next year will lead to a repeat of today's race or back to the chaos and cautions of the first 2 years?
I think it's certainly way too early to tell if the modified layout is going to be very chaotic like the first 2 years of this, or it's going to be a lot more calmer come this year. But I'm sure it's certainly going to be exciting to see a bit of a change here. I know a lot of people love the city of Nashville. People are excited to see this become the championship, the deciding race, and to see them race on part of Broadway there. But yeah, I think it caught everyone off guard that we didn't see a cautions breed cautions type of race, because as you saw in all the previews leading into the race, even here on our Grid Network programming, we thought it was going to be I actually said this myself, that it was going to be a race of survival, that it wouldn't necessarily matter where you started, all of that. All you had to do is just survive to get through Nashville. But to everyone's surprise, we saw a lack of cautions until the very end. It was surprisingly calm. But hey, I thought it was a decent race. You don't necessarily need to have so many cautions and a bunch of chaos going on to have a decent show.
Yeah, I think a lot of the team expect chaos today, as we've had that the last 2 years. But I think they adapted fairly nicely to just having to plan out and having a fuel race and a tire management race. Because if you watch the race, there are a bunch of marbles on the track, and the tires were getting eaten up. And that very long run till we had the caution with Linus Lundqvist, these tires were just on edge. Guys were about to run out of fuel with like 10 laps to go. They were wondering if they could even make it. But yeah, I think the new layout for next year, that's going to be really interesting. I personally like the layout a lot more than the current one, because they got rid of the Baku-like section that it's just way too thin and they wreck in there. But I don't know. I'm looking, and racing on Broadway is going to be so damn cool.
I want to give a special shout out to our friend Josh Bursch, who was tuning in today expecting an absolute demolition derby and ended up with a genuine good race, not because of crashes, but because there was genuinely good wheel-to-wheel racing. If I'm a strategist or a driver, I think I go into this weekend knowing that it's entirely possible that we have a relatively scuff-free race, especially after everyone was expecting Detroit, the new layout at Detroit, to have those same kind of conditions that this Nashville circuit has, expecting it to be that same kind of scenario where you have so many guys at risk of crashing out or having pileups like that, and you have a fairly event-free race. So I think it's good to see clean, good racing on Nashville, and for crashes to not be the main appeal to that. And I think that new layout is only going to help it better. Yes, it's a much simpler looking course, but I think that's going to allow for much more competitive based racing. I don't have to worry about putting it into the wall as much. I can more focus on actually getting next to guys and maybe going 2-3 wide into that hairpin at the end of the bridge. I think it's going to be a really good show, guys.
And now we have a comment in the chat room. Adam says that was one crazy IndyCar race in Nashville today. Calm first half and crazy second half. That's definitely true, especially with all of the yellow flags that were thrown up. And if we look towards next week, we have the next IndyCar race at Indianapolis Road Course. We will be previewing that race next Saturday on the pre-race and wrap-up shows. And Alex, we know you have to leave to get ready for your podcast on Monday. But before you go, can you give us your one shining moment?
Well, my one shining moment, I know he crashed, but I gotta give it to Linus Lundqvist, because that was such an impressive... He was running behind Alex Palou, the championship leader, for quite a while in this race. He was running top 10 a lot, and just so impressive all weekend. And this was his debut. Like, he has not been racing a car all the time this year because he can't race in Indy next. I'm just so impressed with Linus Lundqvist, and so he's definitely my shining moment.
Thank you, Alex. That's a great choice. And now we'll switch towards MotoGP and a race with potential shining moments to be shared later.
Thanks, Isha. That was quite an exciting British Grand Prix at Silverstone today, which looked like it would be another Pecco Bagnaia win. However, Aleix Espargaro closed the gap lap after lap and took the lead in the win on the final lap. His first win of 2023, and the second time a Ducati rider did not win this year. Bagnaia was second, and Brad Binder third. So 3 different constructors on the podium. Next, going to bring Joe back in here for our MotoGP section. So here's my question for you. Does this indicate that Ducati might have more competition ahead?
I do believe Ducati is going to have some more competition ahead, but still the competition, they need to be perfect out on the track. They have to really come prepared, good setups, good strategy, good tire selection. Because remember, MotoGP, compared to other series where you all have one set or you have to use certain sets, it's very common to see soft tires on the front, medium, hard tires on the back. There's a lot of potential for, especially Aprilia, KTM. I think they are knocking on the door. With Ducati, especially the factory team, they're going to be really hard to beat. But VR46, with what happened to Marco Bezzecchi, Lucas Marini wasn't really much of a factor at all. I feel you could really feel confidence in Aprilia that you're coming back. Aleix said we put a little too much pressure and expectation on ourselves in that first half of the season. We know it wasn't going great for them. But this weekend, especially with Maverick Vinales getting that sprint podium, I got to say, I think Aprilia is really starting to turn heads, especially with what's going on with Honda, Yamaha. Aprilia is looking really good. KTM, still a little bit of a ways there, but Brad Binder to get a podium, that has to feel good. So I think if you're Ducati, you're not going to have exactly the cakewalk, but I think the factory team, especially, they still have to feel pretty good that they're still number one.
Yeah, for sure. And it was really great to see a lot of parity in this race. Lots of close race and exciting finish there between Espargaro and Bagnaia. Yeah, so fans of the British Grand Prix definitely got their money's worth. And early on, it looked like Marco Bezzecchi would be a contender for the win, but behind Bagnaia, he lost the front grip and he ended up sliding out of the race, literally sliding. He is now third in points, 47 behind Bagnaia and 6 behind second place Jorge Martin. Do you anticipate Bezzecchi or Martin changing their approach in the second half of the season?
When it comes to Martin, I feel he's going to be aggressive as always. The big thing I'm really impressed by Martin lately, this year, he seems to be really good on not throwing the race away, where in the past, he seems to be very fast, crashes out. He is not doing those mistakes. Earlier in the race, he went way wide, lost positions, recovered nicely. The big thing for Marco Bezzecchi, he has to just get calm, reset essentially, and come back stronger the next race weekend. Don't make another mistake because it could easily become from that 47-point deficit to a bigger deficit because right now, Pekka Bagnaia, he is not making the mistakes that we talked about in years past. I think if he knows he's in firm control, if he could go out there, get a second place, a third place, a podium finish, even top 5, he's in a good spot. Bezzecchi has to race smarter. Jorge Martin, I think he's going to be just as aggressive week in and week out. So I don't anticipate much of a change from Martin. But Bezzecchi, I think he just needs to refocus, recalibrate for the remainder of the season because we're approaching the halfway point of the long MotoGP season, and we still got all those sprint races ahead.
Yeah, definitely a long season, and those sprint races make it a lot longer. It'll be interesting to see if Pekka Bagnaia can seal the deal and close out the year with another world championship. And Pekka Bagnaia, it's really interesting looking at this year compared to last year because last year he was the hunter, and this year he is the hunted with all the rest trying to get him. Fabio Quartararo blew that big championship lead. Bagnaia got him last year, and we'll see if Bagnaia can keep that championship lead and not blow it the same way that Fabio Quartararo did. And I'm going to bring Isha and Ben back in for this week's what seems like a typical weather report.
Thank you, Kobe. Taking a look at NASCAR, I would say that there was a surprise with the weather, but with how much the weather has impacted motorsports in general the past few weeks, I would be lying. So we don't have much NASCAR to report as the rain once again impacted the Cup Series. So tomorrow on Grid Live Encore, Ben will be recapping the race with Brandon Crossland. Ben, I don't know about you, but it feels like Grid Live Encore is now the new home of the NASCAR Cup Series.
I guess it is. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I found a tweet from our friend Jonathan Field, who's been keeping track of the weather all season here. Inclement weather has affected 17 of 25 NASCAR weekends in 2023. 2 weekends is the longest NASCAR has gone with good weather. Las Vegas to Phoenix and Kansas to Darlington. We had rain postpone the Truck Series race shorten the Truck Series race, I think, at Daytona. Snow and rain. Snow in Fontana, California. Can you believe that? That affected the Xfinity race. Atlanta had trucks and Xfinity qualifying rained out. Richmond 1 had Xfinity qualifying rained out. Bristol Dirt had all Friday activities washed out. Martinsville's truck race was shortened. Dover saw their Cup race washed out till Monday. We used wet weather tires in the Open at North Wilkesboro. Imagine saying that sentence even just 3 years ago. Fans would look at you like you had 3 heads, but that's what happened earlier this year. Charlotte had Cup and Xfinity have to run on Monday. Gateway, we had a lightning hold for the Cup Series. Nashville had their Cup race moved up by 40 minutes to avoid the weather. Thankfully, we got that in. Chicago had a rain delay on Sunday. Atlanta and Mid-Ohio, we were at 2 different racetracks on the same weekend, and they both had weather affect them. The Cup race was shortened. Trucks ran on the wet weather tires. The Cup race was washed to Monday. At New Hampshire a few weeks ago, we had rain on Friday, postponed the ARCA race till Saturday, a lightning hold in the Truck Series at Richmond, and then today the Cup start was rain delayed at Michigan, and now we've got to come back tomorrow and run the rest of the last 125 laps or whatever it is. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And I found a way, I think, to guarantee that we can bring the Nashville Fairgrounds back to the Cup Series schedule. We just have to find a way to guarantee that the Fairgrounds goes into a drought for the next year or so. And then all the residents that are at all those town halls will finally come around. They'll recognize that we need to bring NASCAR to every single one of these 5 perfectly good Formula One tracks that they have in the city. And that's going to bring the Nashville Fairgrounds back to the Cup Series schedule because we're going to find a way to bring it back there because I guess that's the answer to your drought problems now is just find a way to get NASCAR to come to town and your drought problems will be solved because we're going to bring the weather right along with us. I can't even think straight. My mind's going a million miles a minute because it's just so frustrating that I have to come on this show and postpone the NASCAR discussion to my show on Monday, which extends our show out when we want to be talking about the feeder series. We have to take time away from that to talk about the Cup Series. It's just absolutely unbelievable how many weekends we've had impacted by weather so far this year.
I know, it's crazy. It almost feels like someone's trying to sabotage the races or our show on purpose. But anyways, we're going to have a full recap of the Firekeepers Casino 400 tomorrow on Grid Live Encore, along with Moto2, Moto3, Indy Next, the ARCA Menard Series, and the NASCAR Xfinity Series, which had no rain. Every grid ranking series had rain this weekend with INDYCAR, MotoGP, NASCAR, and World Rally Championship.
Yeah, World Rally Championship, Rally Finland, they had some rain there, but of course, World Rally cars, they could race in any weather, snow, rain, shine, gravel, dirt, you name it, they could race. But it was a very dramatic World Rally round where we saw Elfyn Evans won the Rally Finland. Of course, we all know what happened on the second day where Kyle Rovanperä and several big names crashed out. Thierry Neuville, second place. But what I find very interesting, he said he was not pushing. He just wanted to get that second place finish. We know he's had some bad luck this year. This was definitely something where it seemed like he really wanted to get it to where he could just get the points, catch up, because look at that. 36 points. Elfyn Evans, 25 points. And remember, you got 25 points for the race win, 5 points up from the line for the power stage, 30 points. It's closing up, but we got very few races. As you can see, several drivers were eliminated. Only 8 mathematically have a chance at the World Rally Championship. Kyle Rovanperä will leave with the points lead after the next race weekend in Greece. But still, if something happens and he does not get any points at all, and you get Elfyn Evans with the power stage, he could be the new points leader. It's game on. World Rally Championship is going to be really interesting to see all that happens. And one of the big things, of course, World Rally Championship, they were a busy weekend, but another series that had a very busy weekend, IMSA at Road America.
Yeah, and it was game on for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship as it became the latest series to race on the freshly repaved Road America. And they started off with drama involving the GTP pole-winning car during morning warm-up. The number 31 Action Express Racing Wheel and Engineering Cadillac of Alexander Sims crashed, and the team had to scramble quickly with little time to get the car ready for the race. The number 31 looked to be one of the favorites to win entering the race. It's been quick all weekend. Pippo Durrani put it on the pole, and then this setback occurred. Luckily, they were able to make it to the grid, but they had to start at the back of the GTP field. But the pace in the car after the crash damage just wasn't there anymore, and they had to settle for a 6th place finish. Tough day for Action Express, and for the overall race winners, the number 7 Porsche 963 from Porsche Penske Motorsport. They've experienced a challenging year. However, Felipe Nasr and Matt Campbell finally put the whole race together to get the win. Jackson, did the Action Express crash and morning warm-up change how this race unfolded? And does the number 7 Porsche's win give this team a boost of morale in what's been a hard year for this group?
I think so, but it's got to be a boost of morale for that Action Express team who made the most out of a not great situation for that wheel and engineering team, but still managed to throw the car together and get the car in running condition and prevented potentially what could have been even a worse result starting from the pit lane, having to deal with those sets of penalties. So I would still say a very solid result for Pippo Durrani, Alex Sims. That being said, I do need to shout out Felipe Nasr and that whole Porsche Penske team, because not only have they been victims to the cartoon anvil in the IMSA series, but they've been watching their sister car in the number 6 just compete consistently for wins. And I think, Kobe, this is for sure finally their day in the sun. Just a textbook race, kept it up front, kept it clean, and in a new repaved track, just dominated.
Yeah, for sure. Nobody could really do anything with this number 7 Porsche. Great day for Porsche Penske Motorsport. And like you said, Action Express did the best job that they could have done, given the damage and the short turnaround to get ready for the race. And luckily for them, they're still in the championship hunt, although they lost the championship lead. So got two more races coming up at the IMS road course, and then Petit Le Mans at the end of the year. So this number 31 team, they're just, all they have to do is just forget about today, reset, because they're still in the thick of it and they can still go out there and win a championship. So definitely made the most out of a bad day. But however, I keep wondering, if it wasn't for that crash in morning warm-up, would we be talking about an Action Express win instead of a Porsche win today? And with Action Express not having the day they thought they would have had, we have a new points leader in GTP. That's the number 10 Wayne Taylor race with Andretti Autosport Acura, Ricky Taylor, and Felipe Albuquerque. After the first few races, this team was not meeting the expectations of everything we thought would happen this year, and we wondered if the championship could start slipping away soon if they don't get max points. However, due to inconsistency across the board in the GTP class, WTR with Andretti, have been able to take the points lead despite being one of 2 full-time GTP entries yet to win in 2023. Can the number 10 team point race their way to the championship, or do you think they'll have to win one of the final 2 races? I mean, Jackson, I was looking at all the results earlier today in GTP. I'm like, wow, there's nobody who stands out. They've been really inconsistent across the board.
It was so interesting, Cole, because at the start of the season, not only did they announce that partnership with Andretti Autosport, but it seems like so much of the gripes and the issues that Andretti's IndyCar program instantly came over to that team. Albuquerque bends it at Sebring. Jordan Taylor sends it too hard up the inside at Long Beach. These guys are struggling for consistency. Middle of the season, just sleeper finishes. I mean, they've been absolutely, don't get me wrong, they haven't been consistently fighting up front for overall wins, but they've been there. They've been sneaky. They've been fast. And it's hard for me to say. I think if I'm in that 10 crew, I definitely want some insurance wins. Absolutely. But with how much variety and how much the BOP shakes up the competition around me, over half the GTP field has won a race this year, Kobe. I genuinely think we could see 2 or 3 more new cars winning this year. The 24 BMW, I still think, is due for a win. And we still have 2 new prototype customer cars in the banana boat, the JDC banana boat with Rocky. And I still think there's a lot to prove for that Proton competition 963. It's hard for me to say right now, and I say that a lot, but I just think if it's consistently on the podium for the rest of the season, they're going to be the ones to beat, Kobe.
Yeah, totally agree with you. It seems like consistency the key. It would be really funny if Albuquerque and Taylor win this championship without winning a race. So we'll have a winless IMSA champion. That would be something else. Yeah, you mentioned Philippine. Augusto Farfus is in the Team RLL BMW. They're the only other full-time entry that still hasn't won this year. We'll see 2 races to go if we can see the 10 and the other Ray Hall BMW get to the top step of the podium.
Yeah, Kobe, and before we go to the race winners, I got to mention this as someone who's been a BMW fan for over 10 years. Just a hard weekend for them from the formation lap. 25 ends up in the gravel, starts a lap down, doesn't even make it 10 laps without crashing. 24, Philip Eng gets some tough love there from Rockenfeller and ends up having to fight his way back. Just a really rough weekend for that crew who was already starting the season off on the back foot, and just hoping that they can really end the season on a strong note.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was not a good day for the Ray Hall BMW team at all at Road America. I believe they finished 9th and 10th in class at the very back. So they'll try to throw out this bad day. Next, going to Indianapolis and then Petit Le Mans. We'll see if the Ray Hall team can end the year on a positive note in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And now looking at the other class winners, LMP2 is the number 52 PR1 Mathis Motorsports Orca, Paul Luke Chatin and Ben Keaton. LMP3 number 74 Riley Motorsports, Gar Robinson and Josh Burden. And I'm saying Josh Burden because Felipe Fraga, he's racing in Brazil this weekend. So he had a scheduling conflict, chose to prioritize that. So that's why you see Josh Burden there with Gar Robinson, but Josh got an extra win there. And in GTD Pro, back-to-back for the number 23, harder racing Aston Martin, Ross Gunn and Alex Riberas after they won the GT-only race at Lime Rock as well. And then in GTD, 4th win of the year for the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW, Brian Sellers and Madison Snow. And Jackson, I understand you want to add something else about the other class winners?
First of all, in P2, Ben Keating, old guys rule. Oh my God, dude. You come home from getting a championship with Corvette Racing in the World Endurance Championship and you're still kicking butt in P2. Ben Keating needs some kind of trophy from us here at Grid because he might not be getting wins, but there's not a single race car this guy will not be willing to go and drive and compete for wins in. Well over 50 years old. Have yourself a weekend, Ben Keating. GTD Pro and GTD, oh my gosh. Harder racing, the wins start coming and they don't start coming. I genuinely think easily guys that are going to be in the championship fight, going to be very interesting to see how that title fight goes with the Vassar Sullivan crew in the next couple of races. When BMW is struggling at the top of the field, it is all about Madison Snow and Brian Sellers picking that brand up and taking that team to the win a couple classes down. I don't think those guys have been outside of the top 5 or top 10 this entire season. And again, just one of the most underrated teams, Brian Sellers and Madison Snow in that number 1 BMW M4.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to Ben Keaton, it's been amazing what he's been able to do at his age. And I know if you look at his FI driver rating, it says gentleman driver, but a lot of the time Ben Keaton is really giving a lot of the all pro drivers a run for the money. So drivers like him, it's so amazing to watch what he does. And this is just a fun hobby for him. He doesn't make a living racing cars. He just comes out here to have a good time, and he's right on the pace with all of the professionals who get paid to drive race car, which is so impressive. In the start of the season that Harder Racing's had, and now back to back, I guess once you shake off the bad luck, get a win, then you don't stop winning. And we'll see if the Harder Racing can continue their win streak in GTD Pro at the next round coming up. And Madison Snow, Brian Sellers, Paul Miller Racing. I'm not sure if you saw this, Jackson, but Sports Car 365 got a scoop on this team this weekend that next year they're not going to be in GTD. That's because they're going to be stepping up to GTD Pro. So that should be very exciting for this team.
Such a great move for that team, who's been just dominant in GTD in the past 2 seasons, as we were talking about. Great move for them. Really, really happy to see them move up the rank, Kobe.
Yeah, for sure. I guess with all the domination of doing in GTD, it might be a little too easy for them. So I guess step up to GTD Pro and see what they're really made of there. And the next IMSA race will take place on August 27th. It'll be the Michelin GT Challenge at Virginia International Raceway, with the final GTD Pro GTD only race of the year. And let's bring Isha back in for this week's grid ranking.
Thank you, Kobe. Now it's time to break down the grid ranking. Week 19 of the grid ranking again saw no position changes in the top 5. However, after Kalle Rovanperä crashed out at Rally Finland, he fell to 11th place. The official grid ranking has not been released yet, with NASCAR being postponed to tomorrow. Max Verstappen will be leading again, and since Formula One is not running next weekend, he will lead week 20. Joe, we never had a grid ranking world champion lead every week. Can Max Verstappen be the first to do it?
It looks like he can. One of the big things, he is so dominant in Formula One. Podium every race, worst finish second twice, everything else has been a win. Where we're seeing an IndyCar with Alex Palou, he's still getting the job done there, but he's had a couple 8th place finishes, 3rd place finishes. And one of the big things I feel is it's just really hard for a driver in IndyCar to be that consistent on a level like you can in Formula One. MotoGP, Pecco Bagnaia, he seems to be up in that same level too, but just nobody could be at that same high intensity level of just going out there, winning races, 2nd place, putting himself to win. And not only that, he's gaining points, Max Verstappen, like in Belgium, for starting 6th place, going to the front, getting the win. NASCAR Cup Series, they're way too inconsistent. All the drivers, a lot of them with DNF inconsistency issues. Then the Supercar Series, we got several of them in the top 10. If they split the wins amongst themselves, you're just going to see Max Verstappen continue on leading the grid ranking. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And of course, the other thing too that could potentially happen, we've seen time and time again, a driver wraps up the championship, then they sort of get this more easier stage where they're going 2nd place, 3rd place, is not pushing as hard. We know Max has said he's having so much fun, he's not getting bored. If he wins the championship, I'm really curious to see if he's going to take it easy on the competition or just keep on going for the win each and every race weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Max Verstappen does once he wins the championship again. And now I think it's time to head over with Kobe to the one shining moment.
Yeah, it's time for our favorite part of this show, the great one shining moment. So drop your one shining moment in the chat below. What stood out to you the most this racing weekend? And Ben, you go first.
Well, the non-shining moment is obviously the weather, but I think I've made that clear already here in this show. But I'll give the one shining moment to Kyle Kirkwood and Andretti Autosport. I know it's been kind of an up and down year for them, really an up and down a couple of years for that team. But Kirkwood's on multiple wins now already this season. And again, I know it's been a little bit up and down for him. So he's gotten adjusted to a new team this year. But like we mentioned during the IndyCar segment of the show, I think he's one of the top young drivers in the series. I think he's got a very bright future, and he proved it once again today with a great win. I'll give my one shining moment to him and that entire 27 team.
For me, guys, it's got to be the crew for the number 31 Whelen Engineering Racing crew. Just this morning, 8 a.m., has to deal with a car completely bend in the wall during warm-up, have 2 hours to essentially get the car in half, get a whole new rear assembly on it, and get that car ready for a 10 a.m. start time. And we talk about the potential bad results that could have come from that, having to deal with drive-through penalties, starting from the pit lane, or just not starting at all. Kobe, I know we were saying that definitely wasn't the result that those guys were looking for, but again, any points in a weekend as unpredictable as this is certainly better than no points.
My shining moment has come to a team from MotoGP. It has to go to Aprilia. What an effort. Sprint race, Vinales was looking great. And then today in the British Grand Prix, Alesius getting the win, bringing the fight to Pecco Bagnaia. What a race, what an effort. That team, a lot of folks were thinking they're going to be struggling, but they seem to keep working. And now they're at a point where I feel just like last year where we saw Alesius contending for the championship. Then just sort of fell apart a little bit towards the end of last year. They're turning reverse. They seem to be getting together their act as we get closer to the halfway point of the season. Alesius Bargo, the Aprilia team, they are my shining moment.
I kind of want to disagree with Ben on this one and say that my shining moment was the rain impacting the sports this weekend. I just think that at this point, it doesn't even, make me upset to see the weather impacting the races. I just think it's funny because it's been happening so often this season. But for my real one shining moment, I'm going to go with Alex Palou and how he was able to finish ahead of Joseph Newgarden, even though he was short on fuel before the cautions. So that's going to be my real one shining moment.
Well, it's not funny to me because it puts us behind that work. We have to do like multiple things at once to try to get caught up when these races are postponed to a Monday. So it's not really fun for me. It might be fun for you though. But my one shining moment, got to give a call to Andy Jankowiak from the ARCA race in Michigan. That was one heck of a run by Andy J to have his small team come up and compete with the like of Venturini Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, and for his small independent team to take the fight to them at one point on the restart, even taking the lead for a brief moment. That was very, very impressive. And for all of you who don't know who Andy Jankowiak is, he's a pizza delivery driver who's also a very talented race car driver. And if you thought Greg Van Alst's celebration after winning at Daytona was impressive, imagine if Andy J would have won that race. It would have been a major party. It's really nice to see those small teams do well in the ARCA Menard series. I'm sure you'll hear more about that tomorrow night on Grit Live Encore with Ben and Brandon Crossland.
Kobe, you took my one shining moment for tomorrow's show. That was going to be it with Andy J. I don't know. Maybe I'll talk about Frankie Muniz a little bit as well. Great job by him getting a top 5 finally in that series. But yes, much more on a great ARCA race in Michigan on the Encore show tomorrow.
And for today, we're all out of time, unfortunately, but we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs, including tomorrow's Grid Live Encore, where we're going to recap the Cup Series, as well as all the races that are current in Michigan, as well as Moto2, Moto3, and Indy next. Be sure to hit the links in the video description to support the Grid Network, whether it's buying a cup of coffee for our team members here or investing in the Grid Network like Colin Show, Mark, Rob, and David does, where they pay to help us pay the bills, stay on the air. And 2024, we want to be at the track much more frequently to bring you great coverage as we do so already with Portland. But we got to go to more places besides Portland. We definitely want to expand, bring you more motorsport content. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's program. For Isha Azim, Jackson Lambros, Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish, and Ben Schneider, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.